Hello, everybody. We are here from the Carnegie Science Center to talk to you a little bit about FLEA Market, which stands for Fab Lab Entrepreneurs and Artisans Market. My name is Abigail McCune. I am the AmeriCorps Maker Fellow Vista for the Carnegie Science Center.
And I am Steve Luciano. I'm the Technical and Education Manager of Fab Lab Carnegie Science Center here in Pittsburgh. So the origin for FLEA Market. We have this big ideal of creating tomorrow's entrepreneurs through STEM. We want to think about sustainability, think about social justice. Human-centered design is one of our big pillars here. But ultimately, with all this high-minded kind of idealism in the slideshow, ultimately, this came out of a pitch to our funders. So we are BNY Mellon Fab Lab Carnegie Science Center. They are our title sponsorship. BNY Mellon is a local bank. Well, it's a worldwide bank, but headquartered here. They have a large branch here in Pittsburgh. They fund our lab. They're always interested in funding projects. And so we pitched a list of projects to them. And they said, "Ooh, we like this idea of an entrepreneurship project." And we said, "Great, we'll do that. But we're a science museum. We are not entrepreneurs." But what we did was we took the programs that we do well, and we sort of adapted them. So we have some existing maker programs for high schoolers, and we realized that we could adapt them, or we wanted to adapt them to middle schoolers. This is one of the few times in my life that I've gotten to actually do look at the scientific research based around making and maker spaces. And we realized that, earlier interventions were key in some of the research that we've seen. So earlier interventions in terms of being in middle school rather than high school. And then, even as little as a week of exposure to digital fabrication actually improved students' attitudes towards and outcomes to STEM, digital fabrication, and things like that. And so we wanted to kind of be subversive with this, the idea of critical maker entrepreneurship. So I cribbed heavily, I would say, from an article that talked about this group of students that did entrepreneurship, but with an eye towards being critical, an eye towards social justice and sustainability. And so we evolved that together into FLEA Market, which we had initially conceived it as being on site at the Science Center, but it's easy to get high school students to the Science Center here in Pittsburgh. We have moderately decent public transportation, at least for where I'm, from where I'm used to in the small towns, Western PA. But you can't necessarily get middle school students to the Science Center. So we realized instead that we would go to middle school students. And so that's kind of where it evolved with some of our partner schools on the road. So we ended up with 2 middle schools here in Pittsburgh. So our Schiller is the local STEAM magnet middle school, as well as classical, which has more, started with a humanities approach, sort of the magnet style. But they both serve students in Pittsburgh public schools. And so we worked with these schools. They have existing maker spaces, which is really, really amazing for us. So we have our mobile Fab Lab, so we're able to load and unload every day. But if you're working with students for 90 minutes and it takes 90 minutes to unload and 60 minutes to reload your lab, it's not a winning time proposition. So we ended up working with our partner schools, the timetable that worked for them. And so we're essentially running 2 iterations of this workshop side by side. So we've really kind of been able to A/B test a lot of what we've been doing in the lab.
Oh, sorry, that took you all the way to the end. There we go.
So our bread and butter in the Fab Lab is, we do laser cutting 101, vinyl cutting 101, 3D printing 101. And so that's the side that I'm comfortable with in terms of I can, take these middle school students into a room and get them, comfortable with the laser cutter, comfortable with the vinyl cutter, comfortable with CAD software, Tinkercad and Inkscape and things like that. But it's really that sort of business and artistic side that I struggled with, which I'm so lucky that we have Abby as our Maker Fellow Vista, who can really has her own, life experience and personal experience that she could bring to this program.
Yeah, so I have a background in graphic design, and I've been an independent artist for a while now. And so when we did the lessons for the business creation part of our flea market, we had lessons about coming up with small business ideas, identifying products for the students to sell and what the audience for those products would be, how to brand their small business, logo creation, and most recently, we just did a session on how to price the products to get them ready for the market aspect of our program. And as for other artists, we had guest speakers come in. We've invited a few who sell their artwork to talk to our students about how they can do the same. I invited a variety of makers that I know from my local art community at different levels in their craft. Some who have been selling their work on the side and work a regular full-time job, some who've just started small businesses, and others who have sustained themselves on selling their work for a while. We had our first speaker last November, Savannah Butler, as you see here. She's a wonderful photographer, and she's been successfully running her own business for quite some time now. She talked to our students about where she started and how she grew her business and what it was like to be an independent business owner. And our students had wonderful questions for her, really engaged in the conversation, and it was an amazing experience overall. We're really looking forward to the presentations of the other artists that we have invited. They will be joining us again this spring. And here we have some examples of our students' projects that they've been working on. For their little small businesses, we have Faye up here in the corner of the right-hand top corner. She's been working on creating hair clips for her small business that she just recently has been painting and staining and testing how she wants to go about coloring them and making them a little more than just wooden hair clips. We have Chris down here who has been switched back and forth between what he was going to make. The beginning of our program, we were planning on a Christmas market. So a lot of our kids had ideas for projects that they would make that people could buy that were Christmas themed or holiday themed. And whenever we got towards the end of the session, towards December, we realized that we needed a little bit more time with them, that we weren't quite market ready. So a lot of our kids had transitioned into something that they could be selling year round. So Chris originally had these little holiday signs and is now transitioning into making t-shirts. We have some wooden spoons down here at the bottom. Ethan, one of our kids, is making. He has little oven mitts, as you see up there, that go along with the wooden spoons. And we've been working on pricing for him, so the cost of the materials for the things that they are printing with and how they can price those for market. We have some inspirational tote bags that we have. Actually, two of our kids have joined up together and doing like a little co-owned business, which is really exciting. We have some pins made by some of our classical students and a couple more tote bags.
So yeah, we are still definitely in the early, prototyping phases, but we're definitely starting to scale up. So it was really cool to see Ethan, who's making the spoons. We figured out how to sort of start to mass produce them, and rather than have to rehome the laser after etching every single wooden spoon, we created a jig in the laser cutter so we could actually start to mass produce these. And Faye, with her clips, the thing that no one told her to do, the idea came to her on her own, is if you'll notice a lot of those clips, some of them utilized, I think her original design was the 4-leaf clover. But then she realized she had this negative space in the 4-leaf clover, and so she took that and turned it into a second hair clip. And so she essentially doubled her production time, because of the designs that she made.
And here we have some student feedback. Like I said, we ran this program last fall, at the beginning, and the initial plan was to end in December. But we found that running it again in the spring gave us a little more time with our kids, gave them more time for production and the opportunity to bring on more students. And so we have some feedback from last fall. Overall, they rated the program really well. About 66% rated it excellent, 33 good. 91% of the students would recommend the program to their fellow students. And we actually, at Schiller, the kids who are joining us for the second round this spring are students that our current cohort have chosen. And we have 100% feel comfortable selling their products at the end, and 75% said that they would join back for flea market after the holiday break. And we had a great success with the Schiller students. 8 out of our 9 kids are returning, which is absolutely wonderful.
So that's what's been really exciting about this process is admittedly we have the luxury of sort of not being so formal in what we're doing, since we are not, we're not grading the students. So we are able to sort of sit back and really let them just iterate and prototype and really kind of evolve their projects. And so what's been really exciting about us is we had originally, our funding was specifically, we were going to do one cohort in 2022, one cohort in 2023. But what so the thought was that we would just, all right, we're done in December and we're going to head back in September. But we realized what we could do is if we invited our new cohort in winter of 2023. So we're basically starting next week with our new students in Schiller. We're now able to still be on site and continue to support that first cohort. So that first cohort are going to become mentors to that second cohort. And so they'll get to sort of, help them throughout the process, show off their projects. Maybe folks will kind of form more partnerships and work together. We've seen groups kind of evolving as one student gets an idea. They'll be like, "Ooh, I'm making a tote bag, but what if we put your drawing on my tote bag?" So we really have the luxury of these groups evolving. Another thing is that this is actually creating partnerships between the Carnegie museums. So we did, the Andy Warhol Museum is also located here on the north side of Pittsburgh. And so we've been able to make some connections with the outreach team, the Andy Warhol Museum, who are a lot more experienced than me, at least, in terms of doing things like screen printing and a lot of artistic processes. So as our students are interested in art, we now have a whole other set of brains to pick. And for me, kind of the biggest thing that I've gotten out of this is that we've noticed, we have an amazing teacher at Schiller. So I work more with the cohort at Schiller, so I'm less close with the other cohort at Classical, although there's a great teacher there. But the teacher at Schiller has just been amazing in terms of helping us, put together a group of students, opening up her makerspace to us. But I feel like a colleague to these middle school students. I'm familiar with their laser cutter. I'm familiar with the 3D printers that they have. They're both the ones that we have access to in our lab. I'm less familiar with the vinyl cutter that they have. I haven't used a Cricut as often. So when the students need to use the vinyl cutter and they ask me, I say, I don't know, let's go to someone else. And so, I'm able to actually and genuinely turn out to the students for technical support. And so they are teaching me as much as, well, in some ways anyway, as much as I'm teaching them. Chris, the student that Abby pointed out before, we were having an issue of troubleshooting the laser cutter. We couldn't figure out why a job wasn't sending. And Chris was like, well, duh, just Control A and look for a hidden design in your job control software. And I was just like, cool, I'm going to listen to what Chris says. And he was empowered to, figure it out. And so listening to him, creating that sense of collegiality has been the biggest takeaway for me. So I think moving towards the end, if you have any questions in the chat or questions, please throw them in the chat. But again, the biggest takeaway for me is really just, if you get a chance, just love give the students time, give them space, empower them. Did I kind of sort of answer your question, Sherry, in terms of whether they're developing teams, individuals? It's sort of both. We're really letting this go organically. And so I would say it's maybe 80% individuals, but I would suspect it's going to evolve into teams a bit more.
Yeah, and we've seen, we already have one new student that is joining us for the next cohort. She was with us last night when we were there, and the beginning of last fall when we started, our kids, it took a little bit of time for them to decide on projects and for them to really feel comfortable picking something. But we've noticed that bringing her on with our students already in production, the other ones have already started creating projects. In that session that she was with us, she started on a project as right out of the gate. She was excited. Everyone was making stuff and she just wanted to jump in and be a part of it. So I think really having the past cohort being able to mentor and help the new cohort coming in is going to be a great experience for the next set of kids. Does anybody have any questions? I can stop my sharing, and if there aren't any more questions, I'll pass it over to Alexander. Okay, do you plan a culminating flea market after each session or?
So truthfully, we're still working on that. So we have a lot of different avenues that we have that we are pursuing. So we've also run into some roadblocks of like, we want to sell things here on site at the Science Center, but there are a lot of stakeholders. So we're looking, thankfully the fact that production has taken a while to ramp up has meant that we're figuring out, do we want to go to an order-based model where we have a prototype at a table, and then a parent at the school can say, hey, I want this tote bag, can you make me a tote bag? So we're still exploring a lot of those different methods for how to sell. So we expect to encounter issues, but we haven't encountered them yet. So we acknowledge it's probably going to be a little bit bumpy. But again, based on the collegiality of the students, I don't expect there to be too many issues. I was worried about students, fighting in amongst themselves for like shares of profits, but less so. That is an issue on my end is what I'm expecting. Abby, if you have any thoughts.
We are out of time. It's time for Alexander, but yeah, I definitely agree with you, Steve. And if anybody has any other questions or would like to talk about it further, I will throw my email in the chat. I'm sure Steve will also provide his email for you guys as well.